And welcome to this week's Mailbox, where I take a look at some of the more interesting comments that appeared on the channel from the last week. And a lot of them will relate to things we've learnt so far from Blizzcon, of course, but there are obviously videos that came out before then, so I'll be covering those as well. It will mostly cover, of course, World of Warcraft, or whether it be Classic, whether it be BFA, but there'll also be a little time at the end, of course, to once again discuss some of the comments that appeared on the Diablo video. So, first of all, if you're new to this, what we do is a little thing each week where we guess where the mailbox is. So, this particular one was, as quite a lot of you got, was in the hinterlands, and it was at the altar of Zul. A couple of things there. What was it now? Someone's saying... Oh, I can't remember now. Someone was sort of saying that they don't... Because I gave them a little bit of a clue. Because, of course, you look at that, okay, Troll Temple, you'd probably get it was hinterlands if you're used to going around the place. But there's a few temples like that. And it was the Temple of Zul. I tried to say, oh, named after, you know, an important character in the early part of BFA. And someone said, oh, it's not the same Zul. Well, it may not be. I'm not sure about that. But it is not. But someone sort of tried to suggest that it's just the word because you see the word Zul in troll things like Zulaman, stuff like that, Zul'Gurub. It's not that. It is certainly named after a troll with at least a title of Zul, if not a name. Because if you do the quest there, this is back in... Well, you'll be able to do it again now soon in Classic. Because they've... Well, they haven't announced an actual release date, but if you looked on BlizzCon when they were talking last night, you would have noticed that it is their plan to release it in March, I think it was, wasn't it? Was it March, the dates they had for the initial release? But again, it was a plan, so it's not a definite thing. So not necessarily that far away. And we'll be able to do it again. Where this is basically where we do the quest for the mallet for Zul'Farrak. In fact, there's actually quite a lot of really interesting quest lines in this zone if you're an Alliance player. It was a fantastic zone. I had a lot of fun there. And it was a zone I went back and farmed quite a lot as well, because as a tailor, you could farm the feathers needed for the Admiral's hat, which used to sell quite well, actually. Anyway, so this week's is there. So you just need to say specific location, don't need coordinates or anything, specific location and the zone. That's all we really need. The only clue I'm going to give for this one is that I was in the area taking a screenshot for a video I did this weekend. So that's already out. So if you watch those videos, that may help you a little bit. I don't think it's, you know, it's fairly distinctive. There's not many zones where, well, there's not any other zones that I can think of that would have this scene anyway. So, on to a few little statements then. Where's the first one? So, I may do an entire video on this sort of theme, by the way. If I dare, again, because I've already put out one video this weekend that's put me in the line of fire. This one would definitely do the same thing again for a different community, but still. But just to quickly go through this one. So, someone's saying about on the WoW Classic, mana and HP regen is way too high. It's not on Classic level. People are complaining about it on the forums. This is a bit of an issue, actually. There's an awful lot of... and complaint is the right word as well, not feedback. You know, if people were sort of going there, they've tried out the Classic demo, said, okay, you know, this isn't quite right, this isn't quite right, as feedback on the forum, that's the sort of thing that's probably wanted. The problem is that an awful lot of people are pointing out little things that are not the same with it and saying... You know, and actually complaining and saying how stupid it is, or oh, this is wrong, and oh, you're messing it up. And you think to yourself, do you people actually want WoW Classic? Do you actually want it? Because you've said you've wanted it. Blizzard didn't, and you can see why. This is the reason I said right from the start that I understood, even though I thought Blizzard should do it, I understood why they really didn't want to do it. Because whatever they do, people will moan about it. And really complain, and this is a classic case of it. No pun intended there, actually. You know, people actually going on at them and saying how much of a mess of doing it. No matter what they did, they would always piss off a very vocal minority, whatever decision they make. And this is ultimately these people who say they want WoW Classic back. Because they all want it for different reasons, they're basically going to kill it off. They're going to stop. They're going to make Blizzard regret they ever did it if they're not careful. So people should really be offering feedback more. Yes, I know in terms of the live version of the game, we know that feedback very recently hasn't really gone anywhere, but it's supposed to be different people doing it anyway. But I have a little point about that as well. But I am likely to do a whole separate video on it because I've probably got about 10 minutes of things I want to say about it. But it will draw an awful lot of fire. Blimey, BlizzCon has not done me any good actually this weekend. Never mind. Right, okay, on to the next one. So, again, related to BlizzCon, someone's saying there's, in terms of what they were talking about in what's next in World of Warcraft, says there's going to be new places, new things, new stuff, new friends, new items, new things. And yes, we can't get much more vague about all the new stuff and things and stuff to do with those things. It's a reflection how piss poor 8.1 looks for anyone dissatisfied with BFA, that they'd rather talk in super vague terms about 8.2 instead, without saying anything remotely interesting or offensive to anyone. What I would say, and someone did actually reply to this, so the first point I would say, and the person who replied to it, it's the same thing, is there wasn't a huge amount of point in talking a lot about 8.1 for the simple reason that anyone who is playing the game right now can experience an awful lot of it, if not virtually all of it, on the PTR. So the new Warfront, okay, I don't think we've been able to try the new Warfront, I certainly haven't, but the introductory quests for the Warfront we've been able to try out. We've now seen a cinematic associated with that. And, you know, thumbs up on Malfurion showing a bit of steel there. You know, that was good. I enjoyed that. I actually liked the videos that they brought out, the cinematic videos that are related to 8.1. I've, you know, I've been a little concerned about some of the, from a storyline point of view, not from a production quality point of view. From a storyline point of view, of course, some of the previous cinematics. But these two, it's like, yeah, I was very happy with those. So that's one. So yeah, it's like what they're going to say that hasn't already been said by people like myself who've tried out the PTR and communicated that to people as well. Then they'd get attacked for just regurgitating what people can already try out on PTR anyway. So it makes more sense to talk about 8.2. The other thing as well about 8.2, and I can maybe understand, I only say maybe, it all depends on exactly where they're going. I have said right from the start that Battle for Azeroth has got nothing to do with Alliance versus Horde. That is a sideshow. It's a little side quest, an aperitif before the main event. And the real thing is, you know, Ashara and Zoth. And it's a bit of a shame we're having to wait all the way till 8.2 before that even emerges. Although there's been obviously little bits, Cahoon, Old Goddy stuff, leading up to it. Now, you can understand, or I can understand potentially some difficulty there. On the one hand, they need to be able to say what's coming up next. Just because of a fluke of timing, there's no point in talking a lot about 8.1 because we can already experience it in the PTR. On the other hand, with 8.2, they still need, at the moment, they're still trying to push this faction story. So they can't just sort of finally announce, yeah, right, okay, well, that will be done with at this point by the time 8.2 comes out and tell us all about the real storyline with Zoth and stuff like that, because they're not ready to tell that story yet. It's actually related to the Zandalari Paladins thing, which comes later in this video as well. I think they've just got themselves into a situation in BFA. The way the stories are panning out, there's so many different stories and they need to come out. They don't want to go too far ahead of it because then it almost invalidates the earlier stuff. Possibly. It's possibly that. Of course, it may well be, as some people are saying, that it's because they haven't really got anything. The thing is, I think with BFA, what they've mostly got is new systems. It's just that a lot of those new systems were not ready at the start of the expansion, which was not good planning, I don't think. I think what they've done is they've planned a load of new gaming systems, but they couldn't all be ready on BFA, so they're bringing them out in patches when they are. So they don't want to talk, because they've alluded to some newer systems coming in 8.2, but they're not saying massive amounts about it, maybe because it's not done yet and they can't be 100% it would work. And if it doesn't work, they're going to need to chop it. So they're only saying as much as they know they can deliver. They don't want to get back into the WOD situation of saying, oh yeah, we're going to do this, this and this, and then later on going, oh no, we need to chop it. Oh no, we never said we were going to be doing this, this and this. We only said we were thinking about it. You know, pulling that trick. They want to avoid that, of course. So, I don't know. I said before BlizzCon, didn't I? Anyone's watching the channel. I said before BlizzCon, I don't think there's an awful lot they can really announce that's going to be exciting for World of Warcraft. I said that at the time, and I haven't changed my mind since. Just for the same reasons, really. But that's my view anyway, that's my view. Right, on to a bit of WoW Classic stuff. So it says, so I did the stuff on obviously playing a Paladin when I played it on the demo. It says, I just like the class fancy too much to not play Ret Paladin. Maybe I can go Holy if someone wants a personal healer for Battlegrounds and wants to try and gain ranks, but even then I would. But doubtful, unlock the best PvP equipment, I'd go back to Ret right after. Oh dear, how do you think getting the gear works? I'm sure you know, because you said unlock. It's not an easy thing to get the best gear in the game, because the vanilla PvP system required you spend an awful lot of time in there. I would also say, if you wanted to actually get the Grand Marshal title, or the, what was it, High Overlord or something? I don't know what it was for Horde. Who cares? But you could do it perfectly well as Ret. In fact, I didn't know... Oh, my realm was probably not the best one to be drawing attention to. It was a bit of a crap realm, really. But there was a Ret Paladin who got Grand Marshal. There was not a Holy Paladin that I can recall. Of course, it doesn't mean you can't do it as a Holy Paladin. Of course you can. What I'm saying is there's no disadvantage of being a Ret in PvP. The disadvantage was entirely in PvE. Because as Holy, you were bloody awesome as a PvE healer. I'm not sure that you would have been all that awesome as a PvP healer. Bearing in mind there was no arenas or anything like that. Your Battlegrounds came out slowly. In fact, that was a thing. I need to watch it again because... Ian Hazakostas, which is another thing I need to talk about, but in the other video, he went through their intended rollout strategy for the content. And obviously we're talking about like the raids and stuff like that. Did he mention PvP aspects to it? Because, when it first came out in Europe, and of course it had already been out in America for a few months by then, there were no battlegrounds. Then Warsong Gulch came. What came next? Basically, Warsong Gulch came, and then you had Arathi Base and Ultrarat Valley, but I cannot remember the order in which they came out. I don't think it was at the same time. But you had but they were, they came out as the expansion went on. But in so basically a lot of PvP was like what people laughingly called world PvP, which is just basically a big scrap at somewhere, Crossroads or Hammerfall or something like that. Or South Shore, indeed. And in that case, you lose a lot of the benefits of being a Holy Paladin as a healer anyway. You might as well have gone Ret, quite frankly. Right, next one. Let's get rid of that. And what do I think about Blizzard changing their mind on Zandalari Paladins? They didn't change their minds. They didn't. What people are basing this on is when people started data mining stuff for Culturans and Zandalari Paladins, it was like, oh, they can't be Paladins. I did a video, as someone pointed out, I did a video back in February not only saying there were Zandalari Paladins, but anyone can just say a thing. There's people that are going, oh, we're going to have Volpera as an allied race. No, you're not. But this one, I not only said that it was going to happen, but that why it was going to happen. And the reason why it wasn't initially data mined back then was simply because the story hadn't been... It comes back to story again. The story hadn't been told. Zandalari used the light, the Zandalari prelates used the light, but they weren't paladins. They were very similar. I mean, they were, very similar to paladins, really. But they weren't actually paladins. So, although you could tell if you played on the alpha that we were going to be getting Zandalari paladins, there were various... Oh, gone blurry. There were various little, statements from NPCs that made it fairly clear that was the direction it was going in. It wouldn't have made sense. All that dialogue wouldn't have made sense if it wasn't going to be a thing. It was as simple as that. But at that time, of course, the game hadn't come out. They needed the story to be told. The story is now up to the point where, the Zandalari trolls, the ones who used to be the prelates, are now ready to become paladins, to reconnect themselves to the light. That's all they were waiting for. It was as simple as that. So they haven't changed their mind. It's just that they're now ready to say, yes, it's going to be a thing. Now, okay, I didn't know that they would announce, that the Paladins would be available when the Zandalari became available, because I didn't know when the Zandalari were going to become available. But, so the story's up to the point where it can happen now, so there you go, simple. So yeah, they didn't change their mind, it was always going to be like that. And it annoyed me that so many people showed surprise when they announced it. Why? I said, this is people not listening to me. You should listen to me much more often. Anyway, Sylvanas storyline. So it says, if they do what you suggested me. So what I suggest, just to go back to it again, this was my theory for Sylvanas thing. So at the moment, it's fairly clear that Sylvanas is acting in what she thinks is the best interests of whatever. But in really, she's been played by the old gods. Right? She doesn't know it. She's not a servant of the old gods. She's just been played. And what happens is she thinks she's doing what she's doing for the greater good, whatever that good might be. Then she is going to find out that she's been played by the old gods, and she's going to go, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Obviously, she has to step down as war chief. She's going to some grand, you know, oh God, I can't think of words. But some, you know, she's going to do something that forms some sort of sacrifice. Doesn't necessarily kill her, but to atone, basically, and, you know, screw over the old gods' plans, whatever. And then at the end of it all, Sylvanas, we know Sylvanas is going to be war chief at the end of BFA, and we know that Saurfang isn't either, because again, and other people seem to keep forgetting, is some developers did an interview long time ago now, a few months ago now, where they basically said this. Again, a lot of people are sort of imagining certain scenarios which they've already ruled out. Dear me. Again, not listening to me. But anyway, that's not to say that my theory of what they're going to do with Sylvanas is correct. They haven't said that. But so that would allow a situation where Sylvanas doesn't have to die, because I think she's too big a character to be killed off. I mean, you could argue, you never know, but I just think she is. I think she's the biggest character in World of Warcraft. She's been the most consistently major character throughout World of Warcraft, really. You know, so I think she's too big to kill off in real terms. But then the other thing was, said blah, 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 she did worse things than Garrosh, and for Blizzard to simply remove her, and that is will make a lot of people mad. Now, I think on this one, I read it as, I don't see why. I think this would say more about a person, and maybe this author's views on justice themselves. Not everyone thinks that justice means killing people just because they have killed. So that might depend on your own personal sense of justice. But also to say she did worse things than Garrosh. She really hasn't. She hasn't at all done worse things than Garrosh. And at the end of it, at the end of MoP, they didn't kill Garrosh. You know, I mean, okay, Thrall was about to. But they didn't kill Garrosh. Garrosh died, but that was in the next expansion, different storyline. It says, once you make her commit genocide and war crimes, which Garrosh did, against her own people and allies, and remember, Garrosh did that too, because as soon as anyone put their hand up and said, I don't think what you're doing is right, you know, he smashed them. Sylvanas hasn't done that. She just narrowed her eyes and then made them fall into line. Garrosh wasn't clever enough to do that. Against her own people and allies, she'll be non-redeemable. You know, Blizzard created a scenario where they can't end this correctly without killing her. Yes, they can. See, everyone's assuming that you can't have villains in this game. That we don't end up killing in a raid. You know, and maybe the way storylines have played out in Warcraft has maybe lent something to this. You can absolutely have villains on your side. You just have to watch, like, you know, drama series. You have plenty of villains that sometimes they're on your side, sometimes they're not. I remember, you know, Sharp, for example, which was a drama with Sean Bean about the Napoleonic Wars. And on that one, on both the French side and the British side, you had villains on both sides. So it doesn't matter who you were rooting for. There were villains on both sides and there were good guys on both sides. You know, you can absolutely have the same thing in Warcraft as well. Sylvanas is a villain. There's no now argument about that. Well, some people do, but I see it as no argument about that. It doesn't mean to say she can't still be in the game. But, you know, it's just quite clear she's not going to be War Chief. So Blizzard created a scenario where they can't end this correctly without killing it. Yes, they can. And this is exactly Garrosh's scenario, so yeah, Garrosh 2.0. So the only thing about the Garrosh 2.0, so what I was talking about is that Lost Honor cinematic seems to be suggesting we're going to get into the Garrosh scenario. The Garrosh scenario is not the killing, because that didn't happen in the Garrosh scenario. The Garrosh scenario was specifically that the Horde splinters into two, the part of the Horde that supports him as War Chief, and then the part of the Horde that say, we're not standing for this is not our Horde, and directly fought against him. In that case, it was alongside the Alliance, and in this case, again, that Lost Honor cinematic suggests it would be maybe with direct cooperation with the Alliance? Maybe not, but they would still be working towards the same goals. And if they do that, then, and someone said, well, what's the problem with that? It was actually a perfectly good storyline in MOP. And yes, it was. The problem with it is then people will attack them for not having any new ideas, because it'll be history repeating itself, which, okay, it happens in real life, sure, but you shouldn't do it in a game like this. You should have new storylines. But, of course, you know, one cinematic, just because it looks like it's heading off in one direction, doesn't mean to say that it definitely is, and it doesn't mean to say that, you know, it might change direction at various points as well. Remember, at the moment, even at the moment, we're in the PTR on 8.1 without trying to give spoilers away. Saurfang doesn't have a faction of his own to challenge Sylvanas. You know, so he'd have to gather support. At the moment, there's him and Zappy Boy, who, by the way, I am going to kill again. So he's basically just on his own. There you go. On to the next one. Right, this is an absolute nonsense. So, again, based on that loss on a cinematic, I said, because there was this big thing about Anduin saying, why did you spare me at Lordaeron? And I was going, have I missed something? I don't remember him sparing him at Lordaeron. So people have said, and there's a few people said this, but this is the sort of clearest one. It says he flipped his weapon and didn't hit him with the blade. It was a very deliberate move in the cinematic. Now, I've watched it very carefully again, and I have to say it's an absolute nonsense. So here's the image just before the point. You can see here Anduin and Saurfang are shoulder to shoulder, and Anduin has moved in, by the way. Saurfang hasn't moved towards Anduin. Anduin has moved towards Saurfang. Saurfang has found himself in the position shoulder to shoulder. He cannot bring his blade onto Anduin. They're too close. It's impossible. In fact, Anduin has got a sword that is short enough to go into Saurfang's side from that position. So quite frankly, when I watch it back, it's quite clear that in that situation, the motivation for Saurfang, move his thing, it's the only thing he can do to put distance between him and Anduin. The fact that he knocked him back with enough force to knock his helmet off, all the rest of it, is irrelevant. That he was just moving him away from him. And then there was no follow-up because he couldn't, because Gen was straight in attacking him. So now I accept, because they've done the Lost on a cinematic in the way they did, it was the intention to suggest that he did that instead of that for reasons. But what I'm now going to say is that actually, if that's the case, they've messed it up, because there is no way from that position he could have brought his blade around. Or even the end, because the end of it has got a pointy bit on it, a spike. That's across there. That can't move in as well. At the moment, that guy who's an experienced warrior, close combat warrior, is in a position where he's off balance that way. Anduin is shoulder into him. He's got a sword that could easily just go into his side. Within the next second, could be in his side. And then that's it. Game over. Between his ribs, done. Finished. Lung punctured. So he's done the only thing he can do, which is bloody hell get him away. Which anyone who's done any level of fighting, at any level at all, will understand. So that's, sorry, nonsense. You know, it's just another thing that Blizzard have done, storyline-wise, that doesn't make sense. Argue with me, I dare you. Anyway, next one. So, about the faction problem again, particularly at the high end in raiding, stuff like that. It says, do you think Blizzard would ever consider a free faction transfer weekend event or something along those lines? No, there'd be no point. You know, people, the thing that's stopping people from going to Alliance from Horde, if they're in a raiding guild, is not the cost. In fact, it's the opposite way around. People have paid money. I knew from recruiting in Legion as an Alliance recruiter, which was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. I was completely lost. I talked to people, right, who would have been perfectly suitable for our guild. Our guild would have been a good fit for them in general, and they said as much. But they said they wanted to go Horde. The reason being, if it didn't work out in our guild, they were still stuck as an Alliance player, blah, blah, blah. Now, I didn't think that made any sense at all. Because what if it didn't? Well, if it did work out, it would be much cheaper to transfer to us than transfer to Horde. But they were saying that. And, you know, I asked, and this happened with 2 or 3 players. And in each case, they hadn't actually found a Horde guild to join yet, by the way. It's not that they'd found a better guild. It just happened to be Horde. They hadn't. They had just determined for themselves that they were going to join a Horde guild. And the reason was because they thought to themselves, look, okay, if it doesn't work out in this guild, I'm still stuck in a situation trying to find a guild, and it's too difficult finding good Alliance guilds. And the other thing is, even if it did and they enjoyed being in the guild, they knew that the guild would suffer because as a guild, those people knew that we will struggle to recruit when people leave, which was perfectly true. So they wanted to join a guild where, you know, the guild itself would be stable and they could be happy within it. And they had much more chance of doing that for Horde. And they would happily, well, not happily, but they would pay a lot of money. To transfer one character is pretty much, it's not, well, it's going on for half a year's subscription, quite frankly. You know, it's a lot of money to do the transfer, but they were willing to do that. So you can't offer, you can't even offer it for free to go the other way. The only thing that would ever cause these players, because some of these players might quite like being Alliance from a stylized point of view. You know, I would have been one of them. But the reason why they won't is because they'll think, well, they'll be back to the same problems they had. If those people would have quite liked to be Alliance, like they play the Alliance races or play the Alliance storyline or whatever, that means they've probably in the past been Alliance already and they moved to Horde. Nothing's changed that makes the Alliance more appealing, really. The leaderboard thing, is it that much of a draw? For most people, is not. Then you'd have to get the whole guild to agree to it anyway. And they know they're going to a situation where there'd be difficulties in recruitment. The only way it would work is if there was a mass exodus towards Alliance, so that it actually balanced out the situation. But then you'd be making your decision based on the hope that a load of other guilds would do likewise, which is not going to happen. So it wouldn't work. There is nothing Blizzard can do to balance the factions now. Not a thing. The best they can do now is to do what an MMOs should have had right from the start, which is no faction restrictions for PvE. That factions exist for the purpose of PvP. That's it. I've said it before. That's the only thing they can now do. Right, next one. Oh, hello. It's gone. There we go. It says, have you watched Preacher's latest video about Mythic Plus? I hadn't, but I have now. It says, I'd love to have your take on it. What he said about, I'll focus on this specific thing, because he said an awful lot of things, some of which I agree with, but for which there's no evidence, some of which I don't agree with, for which there is evidence that it's wrong, and some of which I do agree with, and I do agree there's evidence. So there's a lot of things that was in there. But on this specific point, it says what he said about how people getting free loot pushes them to play content way past their learning curve is very interesting. I also thought it was interesting because I was very surprised that he would say that. I could understand some people. See, the steps he took to draw that conclusion, I can totally see where a different person would be coming from. I'm very surprised in Preacher's case because he certainly started his channel, and unless he's diverted from this without me noticing, I'm very surprised at this, that he actively wants people. You know, that was what he said he set up his channel for in the first place, and I would support that notion, to push themselves to harder and harder content. So the idea that something is pushing people way past their learning curve as a bad thing, I would thought would be very strange, because that basically what he's basically saying is the game is encouraging you to do content that normally you wouldn't get up to. That should be a good thing, because that's how you learn to get better. By putting yourself, because as he said in there, you know, it was almost like he was talking about in MOP, and he did that. He was alluding to the video, I think, where he basically went in into LFR and didn't do anything. He deliberately stood in bad, and he didn't do anything useful at all. And he was only once kicked out of a raid, you know. But other than that, he got the whole of Throne of Thunder LFR done by deliberately playing like the worst player in the world, just to demonstrate how little you needed to do, and the fact that you're in a situation where you don't learn anything, because it's like you don't even know if you're doing badly, because you're not punished for doing badly and you're not rewarded for doing well. So, and that situation, he says, is still arising now, which it is, and that's a valid point. But in that situation, with Mythic Plus, you've got the opposite situation. If you're playing badly, when you get so your gear is now pushing you to higher Mythic Plus levels, which it is, I agree. And I also agree that it shouldn't be done that way, but for a different reason. But you're now in this situation where it's very challenging. Well, you're now faced up to the reality. You've got to play better. You're going to learn to play better. That's what makes you better. You know, when I started raiding back in vanilla, I got loads better at my character really, really quickly, because I had gone from doing dungeons, which actually at the time was also challenging, because remember, when you got to level cap, you could actually raid a lot of the dungeons, and you generally did. You couldn't do the quests in there, but you could get the gear, because you know, your gear when you dinged was pretty crap. And in an uncoordinated pug, no voice comes or anything like that, yeah, you were not going to be completing them in a 5-man. So you geared up first of all, then you did the 5-man to do the quests and stuff like that. So there was a natural progression there. And then in Raiden as well, there's a big step up. And you improve rapidly when you make these big steps up. The argument was always made, I suppose, that a lot of people, when faced with this extra challenge, won't take on the challenge and they'll stay at the lower level where everything's easy. You know, that's what a lot of the arguments against LFR is. That you've got this comfort zone. It creates this comfort zone for you. So yeah, what I would say is, although I agree with the sort of steps that led up to that conclusion, and if anyone else made that conclusion, I would say, okay, you know, I would just say I don't see it as a bad thing. I agree with those steps leading to that conclusion. I agree, for example, like take me for example, I should not have the gear I have with the effort I put in. Now, I still would be doing plus 10s each week, were it not this way, but I'd have done a bit more for I could spend a bit more time in World of Warcraft than I do. And I'd be prepared to do that just to do the Mythic Pluses. But the fact of the matter is that I don't have to, so I don't. You know, I just want to play. I would just want to play through the storylines now and just enjoy the solo stuff. And I still want to do some Mythic Plus because I still want to do some group content, but with people I know, not pugs. You know, because that's then interesting. But yeah, so I was interested that he would say that it's a bad thing when you'd thought, with things he said in the past about wanting people to push up to high level, that it wouldn't be a bad thing, that it'd be a good thing, because then people are forced to get better. You know, you have to learn from your mistakes. Some people don't, of course. Some people never learn from mistakes and they'll never get better. But there are plenty of people who will think about it and go, okay, what did I do wrong there? So yeah, so that's my thoughts on that one. Okay, next one. So this is, again, without giving spoilers away, the so-called choice. Well, there's a couple of so-called choices, neither of which are really choices in 8.1. But in one of them, it technically does change your experience, but with one of the choices, you get a toy out of it and a bit more content. And with the other one, you get less content and no toy. In all of the respects, the rewards are the same. So I said, of course, I will take the toy. So you sell out your morals for a toy, I don't think you can be a paladin anymore. Actually, he said just kidding, of course. But I would actually say, as a paladin, the choice that gets you the toy is also the choice you should be making as a paladin, I would argue. So some of the comments suggest Blizz could use this as some type of vote, but if one choice gives additional loot or toy versus the other, then the vote would not be based on equal choices. Exactly, you know, and this was my point. If they were equal choices either way and you were making just a genuine choice, then it would be interesting. And it'd be interesting to see how many people chose each one. But the fact of the matter is, I can tell you right now that the vast majority will choose the thing that gets you the toy because it gets you a toy. It won't tell you anything about the Horde player community's actual genuine choice. And then it says, but you say here, as every other day, glad to be Alliance. Are you? Because I bet you an awful lot are not. Because remember what happened in Legion, okay? In Legion, at a certain point during the Broken Shore patch, they had an alliance storyline which resulted in Anduin going to visit the throne, the tomb of Sargeras, and seeing where his father fell, and he picked up his sword. That's what he's got now. But of course, as any other major quest in Legion, it resulted in some artifact power, and the Horde players went mad. Now Blizzard argued that, well, what you moan about, you had one at the start of Legion that the Alliance didn't. Which was true. But of course, with all the artifact power inflation, it meant that the artifact power reward was greater for the Alliance than it was for the Horde, I suppose, as well, was another thing. But yeah, that was... So people went mad because the Alliance got something the Horde didn't, even though no fuss was made at the start of the expansion. So the same thing may... Well, I say may happen here. Surely it will happen here. There are people who want their toy numbers up. So the Alliance players will be looking at them and going, hang on a minute, where's my toy? I'll bet you anything. As soon as this goes live, people are going, hang on a minute, where's my toy? Now, it could be argued there are so few Alliance players that they may not, although that's mostly at their raiding end. You know, this is a solo bit of content, so everyone gets a toy. So actually, yeah, there could still be a massive number of players going, hang on a minute, I want a toy as well. So we'll have to see how that one pans out. But I strongly suspect that is Blizzard not learning from past experiences. Right, shall we get on to the nightmare ones then? So, at the weekend, I did a video which on the Diablo fiasco, where I was trying to sort of say, well, look, I wasn't, again, a lot of people accusing me of defending Blizzard on it. At no point did I defend Blizzard. What I said is, this is the reality of the situation. And you shouldn't have been surprised at all. However, you know, there were some things that people could be genuinely upset about. This was definitely one of them. So someone says, it's a stupid decision for future BlizzCon. If I had spent money to go to this BlizzCon just for Diablo because of that video they released saying they had some things to show us, more like one thing to show us, I would have been upset. I would actually go further than that. This was the scenario. Blizzard said ahead of BlizzCon, we've got a major announcement for Diablo. It's a great time to be a Diablo fan. So you go along. Now, if you had a virtual ticket, you may still have cause for complaint. It'd be less so than someone who's bought a physical ticket, which not only costs more, but then even if you live in the area, you've still had to take time off work. It was on a Friday, local time. And so you presumably have to take time off work. And if you came from further away, and there were some people coming from Europe even. Now, all right, anyone who's spent money travelling from Europe and the ticket and all the rest of it to get there, just for a Diablo announcement, wow, you are a committed player with more money than sense. Because even for the news would have filtered out immediately anyway, even without a ticket. So, but the fact of the matter remains that, as I said, it's a great time to be a Diablo fan. There's a major announcement there. Yes, some people would have bought the ticket to be there for that announcement and to be able to ask the question, potentially ask a question. And then someone comes on stage and says, we're releasing a new Diablo game. Guess what? You can't play it. Isn't it a great time to be a Diablo fan? We're making this game specifically for people who are currently not Diablo fans. We're making it for people who like to play their games on mobile, who don't have a PC. Okay, some people have a PC and a phone and like playing the games on the phone as well, sure. But we all understand that if you've got a gaming PC, it's because you probably prefer playing games on a PC. And certainly the Diablo fans have been the people who have played it on PC, because up until very recently, that's pretty much how you could, the only way you could play it anyway. So that was a massive screw you. And I mean huge. That's indefensible what they did there. But again, that was the PR people. All right. But yeah, so I would go further than this statement and say that they have, in terms of the BlizzCon hype, you know, before the event, they have screwed people, and they've potentially screwed people out of money they wouldn't otherwise have spent. And it was also extremely stupid to even announce it at BlizzCon, because they knew that everyone, every single person sat in one of those seats has a PC that they play games on. And coming out with a comment, don't you guys have phones? What the hell was that? Okay, that was stupid. But like I've said before, like I said in the video, the people who go up on the stage, they're not people who are practiced, well practiced and skilled in stage management. They've got no stage presence. Some of them naturally have it, but it's not a key part. It's not the reason they were promoted to their position. Okay, they were promoted to their position for their development skills. It's part of their job if you become a senior developer to go on stage and talk about that. But not one for which, in fact, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't even get any training on it. But they certainly don't get a lot of practice on it. You know, mostly as a senior developer, their experience of talking to a group of people is talking to the people they know, because it's in their team, and, you know, a limited number of people in a room. Not on a stage with, like, I don't know how many people would have been there. Hundreds, maybe over 1,000, I don't know. So, yeah. So, although the comment about the mobile phone was stupid, I have little doubt that at that point his brain was a mess, a chemical mess, because of the sheer blind panic of what was happening. But what is interesting, an awful lot of people have sort of said, you know, I mean, I can't believe that he would have gone out there thinking it was going to be well received. I cannot accept that someone in his position would be that stupid. because that would require a level of not just naivety, stupidity. So I still believe that it came as a, you know, it wouldn't have come as a massive shock that it would be not well received, but the sheer level, like booing. Basically, you've gone to BlizzCon, which is a convention, not a normal. It's not E3, it's not Gamescom. It's your company's convention. It's BlizzCon. Everything you say gets cheered. Even Ian Hazacostas on the World of Warcraft thing, you know, he even lied about listening to feedback and got a cheer. Not an ironic laugh or a golf clap. He got a cheer. Anything gets cheered. And to actually get booed at BlizzCon must have been a hell of a shock. He probably just thought muted silence might be the other thing, and then that would give him time to try and explain the rationale behind it. But yeah, I just think it just unravelled. Anyway, right, what's the next one? It says, I had a lot of comments like this. It was actually a very strange thing to say. It says, why are you defending Wyatt so much? Well, it's because it's not his decision. Some people are actually trying to suggest it was, which is absolute nonsense. Because even if he was in favour of the business decision, which we do or do not know, it's not his decision. That was the point I was making. It says, nobody attacked him directly. I get an awful lot of this on the comments. It was absolute nonsense. It's like, but I almost put a comment up with someone saying, I didn't see anyone attacking him. In which case I would just say, you didn't look very hard then, did you? Because not only are the people in the comments on that video attacking him, or justifying why they can attack him, on his I saw the most disgusting comments being tweeted to him directly. There were personal comments about him, not just Blizzard, on the, well, at least 2 versions of the trailer video, shall we say, because obviously, you know, they put the trailer up to expected negative reviews, effectively. Then they made it private and put another one up. And that didn't help. In fact, that was a stupid thing to do, because that's obviously going to make it even worse. Because you imagine this. So you've gone there and you've put a dislike on it. Okay? You're one of the many hundreds of thousands that put a dislike on it. And then you find out, oh, they've taken it down and put another one up. You're going to go back and do it again, aren't you? And then there'll be more people doing it again, because then they'll be disliking the fact that Blizzard are trying to massage the figures, as if suddenly trying to fiddle the situation will magically, you know, make all the likes appear. And that was a stupid PR exercise as well, because it's almost like, see, I would have expected it to be overwhelmingly negative in the first 24, 48 hours. Because who's going to look at that trailer for Diablo? Diablo fans. All right, Blizzard fans. All of whom have just been screwed over. No doubt about that. But now... So maybe they thought to themselves, but after the first few days, other just general gaming fans, and they might be overwhelmingly positive about it. We might get a load more likes. They knew they were not going to get as many likes as dislikes had already appeared, because, like, you take, for example, I had a quick look at this because of the earlier question, the Battle for Azeroth trailer. Nice trailer, as all the World of Warcraft trailers are. Well received, lots of likes. And that's been out for a few months now, hasn't it? That BFA trailer has fewer likes than the Diablo video got dislikes. So they knew they were never going to change that balance up. So I think what they tried to do is to reset it effectively, in the hope that, you know, the people who'd initially done the dislikes, they've watched it now, they're not going to go back to it, and then normal gaming people who might do an overwhelming number of likes would have gone to it. That didn't work out. I don't think it was ever going to work out. It's absolute nonsense. So PR-wise, I do think that their PR department are shocking. I think that they're completely incompetent. I think worse than incompetent as well. Because incompetent just means you don't have skills to do something. Skills take time to develop and need careful guidance and training and so on. I think it's worse than that. I think they're actively stupid. Because I don't have PR skills. I don't know anything about PR. Well, other than what is obvious, is evident. Which only requires a bit of brain. Anyway. But yeah, in terms of, you know, these people saying, oh, no one's attacking him directly. Yes, they are. And with very, very unpleasant comments as well. And it's quite wrong. And it makes no difference whether you believe that he was in favour of the decision or not. The fact of the matter is that it wasn't his decision. It was never his decision. He just worked on it. But someone was saying a bit earlier, actually, about the people who used to work on Diablo and now work on World of Warcraft. aren't they glad they work on World of Warcraft now? I suspect the answer to that is yes. I think some of the people who've worked on Diablo in the past and now are working elsewhere in Blizzard are probably going, whoa, I'm glad I wasn't here for this. Anyway, so another person saying here, you are wrong in one thing. You don't always invest in new projects only looking at the numbers. Even if Diablo 4 for PC won't make money like a mobile game, you still keep your reputation going and also the fan base close to your future projects. No, sorry, that's nonsense. Let me explain how business works if you don't know. I don't want to be condescending here, but I'm sorry, if someone saying this doesn't understand. You're thinking of a company that started off by some guys making the games out of their shed and it built it up into this huge company. That's not how it works. The way any company like this, and it's not even, directly to do with Activision. Obviously, a lot of people have pointed to certain practices that have changed since, it became Activision Blizzard. Okay, sure. But it makes no difference. For a company like this to rapidly expand, they generally need investment. Now, the people invested in these companies, these shareholders, most of whom will not understand the business. They don't care about the business. They won't be gamers. They're not interested in the company. What they're interested in is making a lot of money. A lot of shares in companies like this are effectively part of investment groups. You have investment bankers who sort of advise their clients on or purchase shares on their behalf to give them the best return they can. All they want to know is, we want the best return. And they're not even talking about a long-term good return. They want the short-term return. That's what they want, because they don't care about the long-term future for the company. If something happened and the company looks like in the next year it's not going to make as much money, they'll sell those shares and buy what look like more profitable shares. That's how it works. And the people who own the shares own the company. They make the decisions. So the decisions really, ultimately, in terms of business decisions, are being, okay, you've got a board of directors, but they are answerable to the shareholders, not the customers. Now, we all know from a moral point of view that, of course, a business that screws over its own customers, it's not very nice. But life isn't very nice. Life isn't very fair. It's just the way it is. And at the end of the day, this is for a game. And for an example, without depressing you about the details, on Friday I had a dreadful day. Oh my God, I had one of the worst days that you can possibly have in your life. One of these days that eventually will happen. You get a few of these where it's just like very, very bad things happen, and it's caused by people. But the thing is, I learnt quite a long time ago not to blame people for acting in their own interest, because you can't be surprised if a greedy person acts greedily. And that's what's happening with the business. You can call it Blizzard, you can call it Blizzard Activision, you can call it whatever you want. Ultimately, it's a company and it's run by greed. The individual developers, okay, they wanted to give us a nice experience. But the people who are making that decision are people who've bought shares because they're going to get a good return on it. And as soon as they don't think it will give them a great return and they think they can get more bang for their buck elsewhere, they'll sell those shares and buy the shares in the company that they think will give them a bigger return. And that's just how it is. Those shareholders are not committed to the long-term future of the business, only to their next payout. That's what they want. And they want that next payout to be as big as possible. They want to make their money in as short a time as possible. So short-termism, just like with governments, is now evident with very large companies. If you want a company to think about the long-term future of that company and reputation, what you really want is to be buying products from a small company that is answerable to itself, that doesn't have a load of shareholders. That's the only way. But there you go. And the more successful that company becomes, though, the more likely it is to need to rapidly expand and then get investment, and then the whole hideous cycle goes again. There was a time when Blizzard would never have done anything like this. Those days are gone, and we just have to face up to it. And there you go, and that's what I've got to say on that one. So, thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to click the like button. If you didn't enjoy it, then please click the dislike button, because that's always fun. Comment down below, and don't forget to say where the mailbox is this week. We just need this specific location, which will be written on the map, and the zone, and that's absolutely fine. And until next time, I'll see you later.